So now I'd like to turn to Jim Muprhy, who is doing a build along also. And Jim, welcome. Really do appreciate you being here this evening.
Okay, as we left off last week, we were crawling into the paint booth. We had finished the car body and had put the sides assembled. So while we were all away, into the paint booth it went, and looking at the finish on this, all the little details of scraping and flicking and defuzzing paid off nicely, and a little airbrush work. So we have the car body finished. The roof is finished. The clearstory, and we had a nice question on this over the Zoom during the period about how to finish off the clearstory. This individual piece was sprayed separately and then glued into the roof. I had mentioned putting paint in the corners, which had been masked during the painting of the roof. And there's a little bit of overspray here with the black roof. But by putting the clearstory in as a separate assembly, it matches perfectly. And what you're left with, though, is these little gaps that are left between the end of the clearstory and the milled ridge on the roof. So we're going to address those. As we talked about tools, this is tip number 19, drafting pencils. I've seen a number of you use them, but some younger models are not familiar with them. It's a lead holder, and they're available in various soft and very hard leads. The hard leads are almost like a scriber. You sharpen them with a lead pointer or a piece of sandpaper. And drafting tape, which we like to call masking tape now. Why am I doing this? This is the car side. It can be painted or not, or assembled. And this is light cardstock, nice smooth finish that we're going to be using for the interior walls of our model. Using the tool like this, you use a sharp pencil, and you draw the outline of the window onto the cardstock. You don't have to line anything up yet, just you want perfect marks on the outside of the window. Keep your pencil sharp, real easy to do with sandpaper. And as you trace the window, you get a nice sharp outline of all the window openings on a piece of cardstock. And again, this is just rough. Make sure you do both sides and label them, because you'll quickly forget which is which. The method to the madness here is then take a very sharp X-Acto knife. Keep your Arkansas stone ready at all times, because it will get dull fast cutting paper. Sharp cutouts on the window openings, and we're just doing this through the cardstock first. When you're through, you have a couple of pieces, and you want to paint both sides with the clear window openings here. And then just put this in comparison to the finished painted windows. And as you can see, these window openings on the inside walls are going to match up perfectly with the outside walls of the car. Don't forget to do the end piece as well, because the rear of the car has open windows as well. Here's a handy gizmo. I mentioned it before, your Vernier Caliper. They're now down to 20 bucks a piece, and very accurate. What I'm trying to measure here is the distance between the line that I've scribed with the floor in place. So this is the top of the floor line and the bottom of the window line. I want to know what distance this is, because I'm going to start cutting up those inside walls to match up. You can also use your drafting tool, which is a compass with 2 points. You can also use that as transferring measurements. Another handy tool to have. Once you've established the distance between the bottom of the window and where the top of the car floor is going to be, you want to transfer that dimension to your inside wall pieces. Then you measure them, and you'll notice, I'll mention this gizmo again. This is my favorite tool. It's homemade. It's a piece of wooden strip epoxied to a metal ruler. What do you do this? It keeps my fingertips half an inch away from that X-Acto blade. Because I've sharpened it, it is razor sharp. It is a good idea to keep your fingers away from X-Acto knife blades. Many of you have learned the wisdom in that. When you get to the ends, here's another way of trimming. I use a clear plastic ruler that I can hold straight here. And when it comes to trimming the very ends of these pieces, I can get a nice sharp corner and just take a tiny bit off. Don't try sanding a piece of cardboard. Next comes lettering. I won't dwell on this too much. My little tips and tricks are use a clear plastic ruler, keep the lines as close to the edge of the lettering without clipping them off. That's just good practice. And what doesn't show here on the car is before you start any of your decaling, hit the surfaces to be decaled with high gloss material. In this case, I'm going to use the letterboard running across the car and a small piece area down here. But this area is hand painted with a high gloss material. You want to get that. Next, take your drawing and lay out the spacing, because these the lettering as it came was kind of close together. So I wanted to make even gaps. So using my drafting dividers to transfer measurements, same distance from each end of the car, and then transfer that distance. Don't fold this up yet. Have it ready when you start your decaling. Tip and trick number 31, make sure you use distilled water whenever you're doing decaling. Distilled water leaves no watermarks, that awful white fuzz around the edge of the decals. We've all seen it. Get tipped off when I used demineralized or distilled water in ironing. For those of you that still remember ironing, it prevents mineral buildup, and that hard water fuzz around your decals is not longer an issue. Once you get them installed there, then it's coats and coats and coats of Walther's Solvaset. Micro scale has a nice material for shrinking decals. This is left over from an old lettering set. Just pick a name for your car, as was the commonly used for business cars. So anyway, many coats of Solvaset to get everything to shrink down nicely over time. Let it dry thoroughly, and then you're ready to jump back into the roof. First thing I'm going to do is put these vertical window posts between the clearstory windows. I deliberately did not try to paint these afterwards. This strip wood had a coat of paint on it, and then I put a finish coat during one of the trips of the car body through the spray booth. Having these pre-painted is going to save you a lot of hand touch up later on. I am not real good with a small hand brush. I tend to slobber all over the place. But if I can minimize that by pre-painting the bulk of the sides of the car, I'm much better off. I then trial and error, find the measurement here. So between, excuse me, the clearstory windows, you want to have these spaces as close to the top and bottom as you can. You're going to get little chips on them as you form them, but it will save you a lot of effort later. These windows are not glazed. That's just a piece of foam behind it that's holding everything steady in a rack. The finest tweezers you've got, dab of glue, put your pre-measured vertical piece for the window posts, set it into place. If you get any oozing over, no problem. Here we have a piece of the clearstory that was not painted completely. I show this because I've got a few touch-ups to make here along the way, but get the bulk of it. If I would try to do all this at once, I'd make a total mess of the roof, which is pre-painted. And if you do get a dab on it, keep some roof paint handy to go over it. Once you've got all of the pieces placed, again, there was a gap over on each end where the clearstory wall did not cover. A nice piece of pre-painted strip wood that comes with the kit fits right over there, and nobody knew there was a gap in there. Looks like it's all part of the process. And again, a minimum of touch up to be done. So get out after everything has been put in place, you're satisfied with how everything fits up. If you cut one too short, take it out, put in the right length. Then get in there with the finest brush you own and steady hand. Holding it in the cradle helps. This happens to be, as you can see, a 20-aught. I got this brush from Micromark, but some of the better art stores will allow you to, will have this 20. You're going to pay a little extra for these, but you don't use them that often. So I take real good care of them, clean them thoroughly, and they can do this kind of painting where it's touch-ups in the corners, a little touch-up on the roof itself. Clean your brush off and keep it clean. Get all these little touch-ups taken care of, and you'll be satisfied with results. And part of this build is to show your errors. I left too much paint on the side here, and sure enough, I got a spot and a spot and a spot. Happens to all of us. Didn't notice it until I was ready to put everything down. And then I went back with the black paint and painted over that. And when I did it again, I made sure I didn't have globs of paint on the side of the brush. Just good technique. Practice, practice. While I got the green paint out, I touched up any holidays that I found along that. And here you can see that bright gloss on the letterboard where I had the decals installed. And that's it. Don't worry about the high gloss now. We'll get to that later. Then touch up your handrails. Again, that 20-aught brush and a steady hand, a little bit of practice. And now is the time when everything is assembled, because you're not going to be able to get to it later, is to paint your handrails, grab irons, and other details, and touch up the doorknob. After that's all set, we're dried, let everything set overnight. Then it's back to the spray booth. This is the roof assembly and the sides, everything painted, back in there. In this case, I like to splurge and use Tester's Dull Coat. It's a little bit more expensive, but the results are just fantastic. And if you don't hit it right the first time, you can go over and over and over again. And with Dull Coat, it's somewhat miraculous. You just don't hide the detail, at least not in HO. So I'm real satisfied with that. And I save that for the special final stuff. And here's my rig in the paintbrush, in the paint booth to keep it from going. Okay, now once everything's dry, pull off the clearstory roof. And now I'm going to put, there is clear acetate furnished with the kit. I prefer this pale green. It seems to be more appropriate, especially because I'm going to be interior lighting on it. I want the clearstory glowing green, which was common practice for Pullman cars or of that era. To hold that in place, pre-cut them, make sure they fit, test. And then when you're satisfied, like in the corners, I had some glue buildup, so I had to cut and chamfer the corners of the acetate before I put it in there. Then get out your liquid PSA. This is my all-time favorite for putting in glazing, because you put the glue in and then you don't touch it. It stays sticky for like ever. And when you go to put your acetate in for window glazing, you don't smear it all over the windows. It's like a hard, it's like an adhesive, self-adhesive after you've peeled it off. So I put little dots in between here, just enough to hold it. It hasn't be a lot. It dries pretty quickly, but it stays sticky forever. It's much easier to put window glazing in. Highly recommend liquid PSA. Only place I found is Micromark. I'm sure it's available elsewhere. Gently apply. You'll notice at this point I'm going to gloves. Once you clean that acetate, no more fingerprints, please. Get yourself some disposable gloves. They're nice and clean, and that keeps me from smearing any gook onto, that's a technical term, onto my acetate window so it looks like nice clean glazing. This case, there's no liner on it, so I just glue the acetate directly to the side walls of the roof. Now a little diversion here. This is where I come out of the kit, and it's time to put some marker lights on the end of it. An executive car would always go at the end of the train, last car in there. So we would always have marker lights on it. And my passion is if I'm gonna run it, it's gonna work. So we start by putting the marker lights in here. And this one I used commercial lights at a later quick tip. I will show you how to make your own HO scale marker lights. I haven't tried them in N scale, but I've done them in HO and O. These are the old Utah Pacific lights that used to have a 1.5 volt bulb in them. They burnt out. So I took them out, inserted an LED, and lo and behold, they're working great again. And you get to pick your color jewels. This is about 3/32 of an inch in diameter. And that is the hole I drove in the side of the car to accept these marker lights. And they don't look too bad once they're installed. And you don't look for a real spindly bracket. And they'll take some pretty good use too. So a little tiny one. And we'll talk later in a future day on how to make those yourself. Here it is, that 3/32 drill bit. Just put that in the side of the car. Then put the marker light in there. Tiny drop of ACC to hold everything in place. Can't see it lit up here, but my railroad standardized on red to the rear, green to the front, and green to the side. Whatever your prototype chooses for lenses is just right. Here they are installed in the back corner. The lighting coming in, trying to make the minimum intrusion into the inside of the car. And lo and behold, when we put up a light, at a future time, I will ask to put instructions on how to build a circuit to power LEDs and interior car lighting, to put that in the chat. And as Jim Kello asked me earlier, my email address should also be installed in the chat so that everybody can take a look at that. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me directly. Another little shot there. Okay, now interior glazing. You saw what we did to the ends. Here are all that sticks out into the interior of the car from those marker lights. And very carefully cut out this liner that's going to be the inside wall of the car, pre-painted. Any touch up, and I'll put a little green marker up on here so it doesn't look strange. First thing I did was it was too long. So back to the sharpened right-hand angle, and yep, it was a little bit too long. And be careful now, because you want these window openings to line up just as well as you can, because you spent a lot of effort here. Remember, inside wall, outside wall, and glazing in the middle, and the two have to line up to get the right effect. You see here, I was a little low, but I haven't adjusted it yet. So right down here, this inner wall was a little bit low. I just have to pull that up before I glue it in place. And again, don't try to set it in place and throw ACC or Elmer's glue, even sometimes you want it just to basically peel and stick. And here are your wires that you're going to cover up for the marker lights. Inside back wall, first thing I did, test before you put anything in. And sure enough, I found I had this thing was too tall. So get out your pencil, and I had I cut this top out, cut out clearances for the marker light wires, and I'm ready to drop the interior into the opening. This, by the way, is reversed. This is the back, the side that faces the inside wall. So this side doesn't count. Flipping it over, yep, that's the right side. That shows on a little door frame, simple door frame, and I'm trying to be fancy. It's going to be very hard to see this on the inside. Take your glazing from the kit, trace it out, and I cut everything on the inside so that my glazing would fit on the inside wall. Again, PSA, smeared all over the back, let it dry for about half an hour, drop this piece in place, and you have a fully glazed window from the inside, carefully positioning. Do the same thing, check everything with that, with the inside walls. This is the wall that's going to face the outside wall, so it's just a rough coat of paint. I deliberately painted both sides, even with some old junk, because you want that cardstock to be painted so it's stable, moisture proof, and it's going to stay put once you put it in there. Checking again for that final cut, using my dividers to get this top and bottom just right, not overhanging, and my magic tool. Again, epoxied piece of old balsa wood, so I keep my fingers, which I value, away from that X-Acto knife. Once you've sharpened it, you'll know why I want to keep away from it. Okay, 2 inside pieces are cut. The acetate is cut, which, by the way, there is not a lot of acetate. If I look back on it, I would have used my own pieces of acetate. This turned out to be just a little bit too thin by cutting the kit's acetate in half. It just wasn't enough overlap for me to be comfortable with, but it worked. So then again, smear these both with this PSA. It dries clear. All you have to do is put the acetate over it. Then you have finished glazed inner walls. Glue those inner walls with a few stops after the acetate's in place. Put that PSA all over it. Here's a great way to, this is an old locking pin from Heavy Machinery. It's perfectly smooth. It's true diameter. It makes a great rolling pin. Again, roll glue side down on a piece of scrap so you don't get anything on it, but that will straighten this out perfectly and really squeeze down that PSA. Your completed assembly goes inside the car, all lined up there, and you can see how it all lines up on the inside, complete with the car body, ready, finished. Roof and body are done. So until next time, when we all climb aboard and ride through, and then I won't try to sing "You Light Up My Life," but we're going to do the underbody. Thank you, Jamie, for the diameter of the truss rods. And the session after that will be interior lighting. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, hi, Jim. This is Greg.
Greg.
The PSA that you're talking about, I'm looking at it right now in my Micromark catalog. Is it, I use canopy glue for a lot of that stuff, but I get the sense this is more like a spray adhesive, except it's liquid instead of spray. It stays sticky, right?
It stays sticky. In all honesty, canopy glue was my last go-to, and I thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then I found French toast. So this PSA, I swear by, because it's akin to peel and stick shingles which I also thought were as good as sliced bread. But by using this PSA, it's relatively inexpensive. I've got the same bottle I've used for 3 years now. It lasts forever. But it is so easy, especially on structures.
And as it comes out, it looks sort of the same consistency as canopy
It
glue in
looks like
terms of
white
how
glue,
you,
but
how you spread
beware,
it.
it's a much lower viscosity, and it has the nasty habit of just coming out way too fast and too flow. As you might have noticed in one of the earlier sides, I had a milk bottle cap. And what you do is you pour just the tiniest amount in a bottle cap and get your toothpick out. But as you're pulling it away, have a cloth in your hand and just wipe up any drips. The stuff does not wash off your fingers very well. It doesn't wash off your workbench very well. So it's a good thing to just have that. Or is it? But I love it.
All right, thank you, Jim. I think I'll give it a try.
Investment.
Jim, I think we all learned something tonight. I'd never heard of this before, but that sounds like a wonderful way to glaze a window. So thank you so much for the great discussion we had.
Oh, you're more than welcome.